Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of my Out of the Park Baseball 25 series with the Oakland Athletics, and we're here at opening day 2025, so about to head into the second season of the series. So in this episode we're kind of going to trim down the roster to the opening day 26, which shouldn't take very long considering kind of the quality of our roster. And of course, it just finished up the offseason video last episode. Just kind of a brief update wise. I think I'm going to try to get a video out in the series every other day. I know it was almost 2 weeks in between kind of the last two episodes. Just kind of busyness kind of led to that happening. But like I said, going to try to get an episode out every other day. That should be pretty doable for myself. So the first thing in this kind of preseason preview of sorts is we're going to go ahead and look at the preseason predictions around the league and for our team. So it's projecting us at 62 and 100. Now I've always kind of found these preseason projections kind of wonky, especially this is kind of pre us trimming down our roster, so I think that kind of can make this wonky as well. I know in the spring training projections we were projected at 73 wins, which I would feel like would be probably more online with what we did. Of course, a quick review of last year, we were 73-89, overperformed our expected record by quite a bit, but I think we should be a bit of a better team this year. I would be kind of surprised if we were in the 60s kind of tier of wins. Of course, I don't think we're going to make the playoffs or anything, but I think that maybe we could see a slight improvement to around the same record. So I would honestly be kind of disappointed with wins in the 60s. So what we're going to do here now, like I said, is trim down the roster, which again shouldn't be too hard. I mean, a lot of these decisions are kind of have been pretty already made up in my mind. So Jesus Rodriguez, of course, kind of the one catcher we acquired who we unsuccessfully tried to upgrade in the dev lab. Carlos Perez has to be DFA'd, and that's fine. 34-year-old catcher. I'm not too concerned about that. Next up to go down is Drew Lugbauer. He was actually very good for us in AAA as a power bat. I'm definitely going to put more kind of focus into his defensive kind of profile here. He played a lot, mostly first base for us down there. He can stand in the corner outfield, so I think we're going to have him play left field down there. And maybe if it's kind of a left-handed situation where he would be the first one to get called up, I think, if we needed a left-handed bat. But for now, of course, he goes down to AAA. Other guys, Brian Buevas, he's another kind of auto guy sent down. He's just not ready for the major leagues, and overall I don't like him too much of a prospect. And I'm kind of going to get into him a bit more later after we are done trimming down the roster. Same with Armenteros. There's no room for him, and he's a bit older player who I'm not really too concerned regarding the future of the team. Now here is kind of where I'm not sure, more unsure I should say, what we're going to do. So of course we have Lantigua here, Lawrence Butler, who's a 24-year-old prospect who I do think is decent, and we also have JJ Bleday, who was very bad for us in about 100 plate appearances, but like Luke Bauer was pretty good in AAA, one of our best hitters. So kind of here we're making the decision between him and Butler as kind of our lefty off the bench type player. Butler, he has a kind of more well-rounded profile. He was with us in the majors for a bit last year and was also not great. Again, a player that I'm not too kind of into with his kind of profile. I don't know how well it's going to work out. Just kind of letting the AI do a little bit of thinking here. I want to put Bleday as our fourth best pinch hitter against righties. So I mean, if Butler, if he's going to be our kind of last pinch hit option off the bench against righties, I'm not quite sure. I don't think he'll get enough use in that role. So I think we're going to at least send him down for now and let him play every day. Then of course he'd be another one of those guys, who's kind of first up in AAA if we have an injury. And of course, with that move now, we've got our we at least that have our hitters kind of set up here. One interesting thing is the AI has kind of decided to put Denzel Clark in center, which I'm going to let ride for now. Him and Ruiz pretty much have the exact same defensive ratings in center, and of course, if you remember in the offseason, we tried to improve Ruiz's defense in center field to kind of make him someone who I would feel more comfortable playing in center field, trying to get him up to 70 range. Of course, that didn't happen. So with them being pretty similar, we kind of found out last year that Ruiz, he's about average center fielder, maybe a bit below. Of course, Clark, I found that these kind of fringe defensive players, it really can depend on their seasons. Like I'll see, I feel like, with like according to, it's kind of scaled according to age. Like these players who are fringy at a position, when they're younger, they can pass by. Like I've had kind of instances with this in center field and shortstop, kind of the two most important fielding positions besides catcher in this game, where like a rating like this, you can pass with these guys for a while, and then when they get closer to 30 is when they kind of really see, like you really kind of find out that they can't play the position, even though their defensive ratings remain the same. So other than that, this is pretty much what we're going to be rolling with lineup-wise against righties. I'm forcing Hernandez in there at second base. The AI wanted to play Allen every day at second base. It's number one, I want to see Hernandez play at second base. We were able to improve him a bit in the dev lab, get that defense up at second base. And yeah, I want to see him play. Secondarily, that's just would kind of kill our offense. We Nick Allen, of course, very bad offensive season last year, not a great offensive player, and we of course brought in Nick Ahmed, who's also like a glove first infielder. So I really don't want to be playing both of those guys in the lineup every day. There'll be times where both of them play at the same time. So that kind of puts Allen in the backup infielder role, which I think he's probably more suited for. He's just not an everyday player. He's just, kind of a glove first, light hitting backup infielder, which is a fine role for him. And then other than that, the roster, pretty much the same. Of course, Brent Rooker is kind of the only everyday guy. Of course, that's not back, what we covered in the last video. One interesting thing is the catching is going to be a bit more of a timeshare, at least at the start. I'm going to let this kind of play out. Banfield, a player I like. I think he profiles better as a backup catcher, of course. He's the best defensive catcher we have in the organization. You can see his defensive ratings there. Not as high of an overall as Langoliers. I don't think the bat's as good either, but of course with catcher, this is a position where both guys are going to play because of fatigue anyway. So I'm fine kind of letting this ride out for now. If one is performing a lot better than the other, like if Langoliers is just outperforming him, I think the AI will probably, take that in consideration, with playing time, and I'll force playing time if I have to. And Langoliers is kind of a player who, he did have a good season last year, and I'm going to kind of get into this a bit later, but he's a player who I might be trying to move during the season. Other than that, Lantigua, he's going to be our righty, bat off the bench. He's pretty much a corner outfielder. I wouldn't really like to see him playing the infield, but I'm sure he'll get some run there as well. And then against lefties, just a little bit of a different lineup. The lefties are staggered down, Brown and Noda farther down in the lineup against lefties, but pretty much the same personnel wise. All right, pitching now. We only have 16 guys on the 40-man who are pitchers right now, and that's sort of because we've had some injuries. I can see Joe Boyle, he'll be back in a bit, so he'll only just miss the first few days of the season. And then other guys who are injured, Jack Cushing, he's down for 6 weeks. I don't know if he would have made the team. He performed decently well last year. He's pretty much a depth starter for us who also can be used out of the bullpen. Brett Harris, third baseman, who I forgot to cover actually before tried to trim down the roster. He performed very badly in the majors last year. He wasn't going to make the team anyway, but he's going to be missing the first month of the season on the injured list with a strained hamstring. And Ken Waldichuk, another player who I don't really think would have made the roster. He pitched a lot of innings for us last year. He tore his labrum, so he's down for the year. So he's just an arm that we're not going to have this year. Not like he's in the future, my future plans or anything necessarily, but he's just a depth arm that we will be without this year. So not too big of a deal. So back to trimming down the roster. It's going to be pretty much the same guys. So Oswaldo Beto, he's going to be going down. JT Brubaker, we of course signed. I would like him to be on the roster. Joey Estes, he's a younger pitcher. We're going to also send him down as well. Brady Basso, he had a very bad spring training. I don't like to put a lot of stock in the spring training stats, but kind of when you're a fringe guy and I'm deciding which one, which guy to keep on the roster and not. It's kind of hard to justify putting someone on that is just so bad in spring training, and it's kind of the rule of thumb in real life. For established players, spring training statistics aren't really something you should really be reading into unless it's like a like a longer term trend, and even then it's a pretty much a wait and see game until the regular season starts. With these fringe players, it's kind of, you can't take spring training, too seriously, but when someone is just, outright, disappointing in spring, decisions have to be made. So then his poor spring, just we'll leave him off the roster for now. Otherwise, we have no more cuts to make. With that said, we've got our 13 guys, so we're going to let the AI fill out the rest of the staff, and this is fine. Mason Miller, who I of course said in the last video, even though he had an unsuccessful dev lab experience where he actually lost him to velo when they were trying to increase his stamina, he's going to be starter this year. We're going to roll him out. This profile, he doesn't have good stamina, but you can start guys with this low stamina, and he can still be an effective starter. Of course, his profile is great for a starting pitcher, and he is someone who could be a future building block, so we want him in the rotation. Matt Boyd, of course, a veteran we brought in. Hopefully he can pitch well for us, need some innings, and maybe we can flip him at the deadline. Brady Singer, we brought him on a 2-year deal. He's also hopefully a bounce-back candidate. He was actually good in Kansas City in this game. I know, in real life he had a unencouraging 2023, but in this game he had a good 2024, and for some reason they just non-tendered him, so we brought him in on a 2-year deal, $9 million each year. Actually, the second year is a player option. That's right. So if he's a good year, he'll probably opt out of that second year. So we're probably going to want to capitalize on his value if he is indeed good for us, which hopefully he is. Mitch Spence, another guy who I unsuccessfully tried to bump up in the dev lab. He's a guy I like. Extreme ground ball guy, good control, 4 decent pitches. Not great stuff, but of course he's a ground ball guy. So, and then in the 5 spot for us, we've got Matt Cantorino, of course, a guy we acquired via trade last year with the Twins, and I think profile is probably better in the bullpen, but we're going to give him a ride as a starter. Why not? And then bullpen wise, pretty much a lot of the same. JT Brubaker, he's someone who probably will bounce back and forth between the bullpen and starting. I'm sure that if a starter goes down, he'll be the first guy to fill in. Without Mason Miller, Kyle Muller is going to be the closer, and he was decent for us. He also started some games. That ERA is kind of inflated because he was so bad as a starter, but we'll have him in the bullpen this year. Thomas Zapucki, a guy who was not great for us, but of course another situation where we had to use him as a starter and out of the bullpen. He was much better out of the bullpen and awful as a starter, so we have him as one of our lefties in the bullpen. Luis Medina, Zach Jackson, Scott Efros, decent guys in middle relief. Efros particularly was interesting for us. We'll see how he does this season. Tom Cosgrove, another player who was good for us. He's going to be kind of a lefty specialist as a middle reliever. And JP Sears is a long relief for us. He was bad last year for us, very bad in 9 starts. He had a very good spring. He's also another guy who can hop into the rotation if we need help there. So he will probably do some bouncing back and forth. So I know one thing that I mentioned kind of with hitters is I mentioned a possible Shea Langoliers trade, and that kind of ties into something that I want to talk about, and that's our AAA depth. So we have a lot of players kind of on the fringes of the major leagues that I feel like are very similar players, and what I want to do at some point during the season is consolidate some of these guys and hopefully get a player that's better than that's more valuable than these players individually. We have players like Armenteros, we have infielders like Jacob Wilson, and then Brian Buevas is another outfielder. We've got a bunch of young catching that I feel like is somewhat underrated. Of course, we have Rodriguez, who we've covered in this video in this series. Daniel Susac, who we've also talked about, and then Daniel Viholain, who we got from the Padres in the Sean Newcomb trade, who I think is interesting. Well, so a lot of these kind of 45-ish overall catchers, I think a lot of them have kind of more underrated bats that I think could play well. And frankly, I just like a lot of these players more than Langoliers. I think their bats profile better. Most of them are slightly better, if not about par on defense. So I'm going to definitely be moving probably at least 2 of these catchers at some point. I've shopped them around pretty much nonstop for the past few days in game, and I haven't really gotten any interesting offers. So this is just kind of a situation where I'm not going to bore everyone just shopping these players around over and over and over again on screen. So I'm going to be searching for the best deal I could find. And the quality of the deal probably depends on which players I can move. Like, Langoliers was a 2-WAR player, league average bat at the catcher position for us last year. I'm not just going to move him just because I decided that he's the one that I like the least. It depends on what kind of value we can get out of these guys. So I'm just going to trade the guys who I think I can get the best value for, or the deals that I like the best, I should say. So, yeah, with the outfielders like Brian Buevas, Lazaro Monteros, kind of guys that I think, are just similar players. They're outfielders corner outfielders that can't really hit. So, not too interested in keeping that kind of player around longer. And one player that actually did make this sort of deal for, I should say, is Rhys Hines. I got him from the White Sox, and they had gotten him previously from the Reds. So we got him for Jalen Rudd and Colby Thomas. Thomas, just 24, the player I'm talking about, 24-year-old corner outfielder who can't really hit. He's got some power potential and room to grow, but he's 24. Wasn't particularly good in Double-A last year. So I thought, why not move on from him? Jalen Rudd, we got him in the Paul Blackburn trade, where we also got Lantigo last year. Again, a first base plus corner outfielder. So, he actually has, a decent eye. He's got a good plate discipline, but he's just not going to impact baseball with that 35 power, 50 gap power profile. And he, was actually, quite bad last year in A-ball. So, I just didn't think anything was really going to happen for him. And Rhys Hines, he's a player who I've had, in OOTP saves, going back for the last few years at least, offline. He's a player who I've seen develop nicely. And yeah, he's a bit of a, situation where he's like a third baseman that isn't really good at fielding. So, he, can be developed into more of a first baseman, but I know he's always a player, his outfield ratings are much better than his infield ratings. He can actually be a decent defensive corner outfielder, so that's what we're doing. I felt like his ratings, his overall rating and the way the game was rating him was a bit deflated, based on rating him as a third baseman, and we're going to be playing him in the corner outfield, possibly some first base, so he's another guy who can be that for us. And I feel like the reason why I acquired him is he's more of a power bat, so I think he has more viability long term, rather than like a guy like Armenteros, who's a corner guy with no power. So I feel like he's just a different type of player, and a player that could help us. And he's also I don't know if he's on the 40-man. I think it doesn't look like he's on the 40-man, but he is 40-man eligible. It looks like he may have been on at one point, although it says none there. But although that could be a glitch, because sometimes the game does get 40-man service time incorrect on this. And with that said, I think that is about going to do it for the video. Honestly, it took a little longer than I wanted, but that's fine. We'll get into the season during the next video and move on and kind of update from there. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the series, definitely don't hesitate to leave a comment or subscribe, as I am definitely enjoying playing the series. So I really hope you are as well. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next episode.